Chapter 1, Jonathan Harker's Journal, May 3rd. I left Munich on the 1st of May, heading to Vienna and arriving there the next morning. Unfortunately, the train was delayed by an hour in Budapest. As we passed through Budapest, I was intrigued by the glimpses of the city from the train, but I couldn't explore much due to our late arrival. The journey from Vienna to Klausenburg was pleasant, and I stayed at the Hotel Royal for the night. For dinner, I had an excellent dish called paprika hendel, a chicken with red pepper seasoning. I also enjoyed a dish called implantata, which was eggplant stuffed with forcemeat. I must get the recipes for Mina, she would love them. Having some free time in London, I had researched Transylvania at the British Museum. I learned that the area Count Dracula mentioned is in the eastern part of the country, near the borders of Transylvania, Moldavia, and Bukovina. It's located in the Carpathian Mountains, a wild and less explored region of Europe. During my travels, I noticed that the population of Transylvania comprises four distinct nationalities: Saxons, Wallachs, Magyars, and Szekelys. I will be meeting the latter, who claim to be descendants of Attila and the Huns. It's fascinating to be among such diverse people, and I look forward to learning more about their traditions and beliefs. As we journeyed further east, I couldn't help but feel a sense of eerie excitement. The Carpathians are known for collecting superstitions from around the world, and I hope to learn more about them from Count Dracula himself. The night was restless, perhaps due to the paprika or the howling dog outside my window. Morning brought an insistent knocking on my door, and I hurried to get ready for the day ahead. May 4th. The carriage was ready to take me to my destination, Count Dracula's castle. As we traveled through the Carpathians, the scenery was breathtaking. Steep hills crowned with castles and picturesque villages dotted the landscape. Upon reaching the Borgo Pass, the driver, a superstitious man, seemed reluctant to proceed. He spoke of the eve of St. George's Day and warned me of evil spirits roaming the land at midnight. Though I brushed it off, his fear seemed contagious, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. We continued through the pass, and as the sun set, the surroundings grew darker and colder. Strange things began to happen. Dogs howled, wolves were heard in the distance, and the peasants crossed themselves as they looked at me. The driver assured me that the wolves were harmless, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Late at night, the carriage stopped unexpectedly, and the driver left to investigate a mysterious blue flame. The wolves surrounded us, and fear gripped me as they howled louder and closer. Chapter 2, The Mysterious Castle. As the carriage came to a halt in the courtyard of the ruined castle, I couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. The driver seemed unperturbed, as if he had brought me to this eerie place countless times before. There was no sign of life around, and the castle's broken battlements loomed ominously against the moonlit sky. The driver motioned for me to alight, and I stepped out of the carriage, my eyes scanning the surroundings. It felt as though time had stood still in this desolate place. The wind whispered through the broken walls, creating an eerie symphony that sent shivers down my spine. With every step I took, I felt a strange sensation, as if unseen eyes were watching my every move. The driver, with his stern face and piercing eyes, guided me through the courtyard and towards the entrance of the castle. The heavy wooden door creaked open, and we stepped into the darkness within. The inside of the castle was no less haunting than its exterior. Cobwebs adorned the corners, and the air was thick with dust and a musty scent of decay. The driver led me through a labyrinth of dark corridors and dimly lit halls, each step bringing us deeper into the heart of this ancient structure. Finally, we arrived at a grand chamber, where a tall figure awaited us. It was Count Dracula himself. Dressed in formal attire, he exuded an aura of elegance and power that was both captivating and intimidating. His eyes gleamed with a mesmerizing intensity as he greeted me. "Welcome, Mr. Harker," he said, his voice smooth and hypnotic. "I trust your journey was not too arduous." I mustered a polite response, trying to maintain my composure in the presence of this enigmatic nobleman. He motioned for me to sit, and as I did, he took a seat opposite me. Count Dracula was curious about my journey, and I recounted my travels and experiences thus far. He listened intently, occasionally nodding in acknowledgement. It seemed as though he knew more about me than I did about him, which only added to the mystery surrounding this enigmatic figure. As the conversation continued, I couldn't help but notice that the room was becoming increasingly cold. The fire in the hearth had burned low, and a chill seemed to seep into my bones. Dracula, however, appeared unaffected, his gaze never wavering from me. We discussed various topics, from the customs of Transylvania to the legends of the Carpathians. The Count displayed a keen interest in my knowledge of his homeland and its folklore. He seemed pleased with my inquiries about the local superstitions and traditions, as if I were an unwitting player in some elaborate game. As the night wore on, I began to feel an overwhelming sense of drowsiness. The weariness in my bones was undeniable, and I struggled to keep my eyes open. Count Dracula noticed my condition and offered me a room in the castle to rest for the night. Feeling a mix of curiosity and unease, I accepted his offer. The Count called upon a servant, who led me to a chamber on the upper floor. The room was adorned with faded tapestries and antique furnishings, which only added to its eerie atmosphere. Lying on the bed, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. What had I gotten myself into? The castle, the wolves, the blue flame, all seemed like fragments of a surreal nightmare. Chapter 3: Unveiling the Darkness. The night passed fitfully, filled with strange dreams and restless sleep. I awoke early the next morning with a sense of both fascination and dread. The events of the previous night felt surreal, yet the reality of being in the enigmatic Count Dracula's castle was undeniable. As I ventured out of my room, the castle was already abuzz with activity. Servants moved silently through the halls, and I caught glimpses of Dracula himself, conferring with his staff. Despite the daylight filtering through the windows, a sense of gloom still hung over the place, as if the darkness clung to the very walls. I made my way down to the dining hall, where a modest breakfast awaited me. Count Dracula joined me, and we continued our conversation from the night before. He spoke of his long lineage, tracing his ancestry back through the centuries. It was as if he were recounting the history of Transylvania itself, with himself at the center of it all. I found myself captivated by his tales, but an undercurrent of unease remained. There was an aura of agelessness about him, an otherworldly quality that defied explanation. It was as if time had little hold on this enigmatic figure, and I couldn't help but wonder about the truth behind the rumors of immortality. As the day wore on, Count Dracula suggested that we take a tour of the castle. I gladly accepted, eager to explore this ancient edifice and perhaps uncover some of its mysteries. The castle was vast and labyrinthine, with hidden passages and secret chambers that spoke of a rich and storied history. In one of the grand hallways, I noticed a portrait gallery that seemed to stretch on forever. The faces of long-deceased ancestors stared down at me, their eyes seeming to follow my every move. Dracula pointed out various family members, recounting their exploits and accomplishments as if they were still alive. As we delved deeper into the castle, we arrived at a dimly lit room filled with dusty tomes and ancient manuscripts. Count Dracula revealed that this was his personal library, a collection of knowledge accumulated over centuries. I couldn't help but marvel at the wealth of information contained within those weathered pages. In the library, we discussed various topics, from history and philosophy to the occult and the arcane. Count Dracula's knowledge was vast and profound, and I found myself drawn deeper into his world of dark secrets and hidden truths. There were whispers of forbidden knowledge, of ancient rituals and powers beyond comprehension. As the day drew to a close, I retired to my room once again, my mind abuzz with thoughts and questions. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was merely scratching the surface of the enigma that was Count Dracula. There was a darkness about him that both intrigued and repelled me, and I knew that I had to tread carefully in this strange and alluring world. Over the next few days, I continued to explore the castle and its surroundings. Count Dracula was a gracious host, showing me the beauty of Transylvania while still keeping much of its history veiled in shadows. He seemed to revel in the mystique of his homeland, and I often caught glimpses of a more ancient and primal nature lurking behind his refined demeanor. Yet, with every passing day, a sense of foreboding grew within me. The howling of wolves at night, the flickering blue flame in the distance, and the ever-present feeling of being watched all conspired to heighten my anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a pawn in some grand design, with Count Dracula as the puppet master. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness descended upon the castle, I found myself wandering through the moonlit courtyard. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a haunting melody that seemed to echo with the voices of the past. As I gazed up at the stars, a sense of insignificance washed over me, as if I were a mere speck in the grand tapestry of time. In that moment, I knew that I had to leave this place. The allure of the unknown and the thirst for knowledge were powerful forces, but so too was the primal instinct for self-preservation. I could not ignore the nagging feeling that I was playing a dangerous game, and that the stakes were far higher than I could fathom. The following morning, I approached Count Dracula with my decision. His response was both enigmatic and unsettling. He seemed to know my thoughts before I spoke them, and his eyes held a mixture of disappointment and understanding. It was as if he had anticipated this moment all along, and I was but a fleeting visitor in his timeless domain. As I prepared to depart, Count Dracula offered me a final glimpse into his world. He showed me a hidden chamber, filled with ancient artifacts and arcane symbols. It was a place of great power and forbidden knowledge, and I felt a shiver run down my spine as I gazed upon its contents. With a heavy heart, I bid farewell to the castle and its enigmatic master. Chapter 4: The Ties That Bind. Returning to my normal life after the encounter with Count Dracula proved to be both a relief and a challenge. The memories of my time in the dark and ancient castle were etched into my mind, and I found it difficult to shake the feeling of being watched, even in the bustling streets of the city. As days turned into weeks, I tried to convince myself that it was all a product of an overactive imagination. Perhaps the legends of vampires and dark powers were nothing more than folklore and superstition. Yet, a part of me couldn't let go of the nagging doubt that lingered in the depths of my consciousness. I resumed my daily routine, burying myself in work and trying to push aside the memories of my encounter with Count Dracula. However, life had other plans for me. One evening, as I returned home after a particularly long day, I found a letter waiting for me on the doorstep. The handwriting on the envelope was elegant yet archaic, and a chill ran down my spine as I recognized it as Count Dracula's. My heart skipped a beat as I tore open the letter, uncertain of what I would find inside. It was a short and enigmatic message. Dear Jonathan, I trust that you have returned safely to the world of mortals. I hope the shadows of my realm have not left too lasting an impression on you. Though our encounter was brief, I found our conversation intriguing and enlightening. Do not be alarmed by this letter. I do not seek to bring you harm or exert power over you. Instead, I wish to extend an invitation. There are matters we discussed that I believe would benefit from further exploration. I sense in you a thirst for knowledge and an open mind that is rare among your kind. If you find it in your heart to return to my castle, I shall be delighted to host you once again. I assure you that your safety will be my utmost concern. Consider this not as a demand but as an offer of companionship, for there are few who can comprehend the burden of immortality as I do. Yours faithfully, Count Dracula. As I read the letter, conflicting emotions swirled within me. Part of me was drawn to the allure of the unknown, the opportunity to delve deeper into the mysteries that had captivated me since my first encounter with the enigmatic Count. Yet, another part of me urged caution, warning me of the dangers that lay in the shadows. I pondered the decision for days, weighing the risks and the potential rewards. Ultimately, the thirst for knowledge and the fascination with the arcane won over my apprehensions. I decided to accept Count Dracula's invitation and return to his castle once more. The journey back to Transylvania was fraught with uncertainty and doubt. I questioned my decision repeatedly, wondering if I had made a grave mistake. However, as the castle's imposing silhouette came into view, I felt a strange sense of reassurance wash over me. It was as if the castle's ancient stones held a secret familiarity, welcoming me back like an old friend. Upon my return, Count Dracula received me with the same air of enigmatic hospitality as before. He seemed genuinely pleased that I had chosen to return, and we resumed our conversations as if no time had passed at all. It was both comforting and unsettling to slip back into the rhythms of our previous interactions. As the days turned into weeks, I delved deeper into the mysteries of the castle and its ancient master. Count Dracula shared more of his knowledge with me, revealing secrets that few others would ever know. We explored the hidden chambers of the castle, deciphered arcane texts, and discussed the nature of power and immortality. Yet, even as I reveled in the pursuit of knowledge, a sense of unease persisted. There was an underlying darkness that I couldn't ignore, a feeling that I was getting entangled in a web of forces beyond my control. Count Dracula's charisma and charm were beguiling, but beneath the surface, I sensed a deeper, more sinister purpose. As time passed, I began to notice changes within myself. The thirst for knowledge that had initially drawn me to Count Dracula's castle took on a more insidious edge. I found myself becoming obsessed with immortality, with the idea of transcending the limitations of human existence. The line between curiosity and obsession blurred, and I started to neglect the world outside the castle's walls. My ties to the world of mortals began to fray, and I felt increasingly isolated from my former life. It was as if the castle and its master had become my entire world, and everything else was but a distant memory. In moments of solitude, doubts crept back into my mind. Was I losing myself to the darkness that surrounded me? Had I become a pawn in Count Dracula's grand design? I knew that I had to break free from this all-encompassing fascination before it consumed me entirely. Summoning all my courage, I confronted Count Dracula about my growing concerns. His response was enigmatic as ever, neither confirming nor denying my fears. He spoke of the allure of immortality and the burden it carried, of the temptation to embrace the darkness within. In his words, I sensed a mix of genuine wisdom and a subtle manipulation, as if he were trying to ensnare me further in his web. It was then that I realized I could no longer trust the words of the ancient count. I had to rely on my own instincts and escape the castle's grasp before it was too late. With a heavy heart, I bid farewell to Count Dracula and his ancient realm. Chapter 5: Redemption and Reckoning. Returning to the world of mortals proved to be a challenging endeavor. The memories of my time with Count Dracula lingered like shadows in the corners of my mind, and I struggled to find a sense of normalcy in my everyday life. However, I was determined to make amends for my obsession with the allure of immortality and the darkness that had almost consumed me. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in my work and studies, using my newfound knowledge to shed light on the mysteries that had captivated me for so long. I became a scholar of the arcane, seeking not to wield power for myself but to understand the nature of the supernatural forces that lurked in the world. As I delved deeper into my research, I uncovered ancient texts and artifacts that held the secrets of long-forgotten civilizations. My quest for knowledge became a mission to protect the world from the darkness that threatened to breach its borders. I sought to use my expertise to confront malevolent forces and aid those who fell victim to the unknown. However, the darkness I sought to conquer was not merely an external force. The encounter with Count Dracula had left an indelible mark on my soul, and I struggled with the temptation to embrace the very darkness I sought to defeat. It was a constant battle between light and shadow, and I knew that I had to tread carefully lest I lose myself once more. During my journey of redemption, I encountered others who had also fallen under the influence of dark powers. Some had succumbed to the allure of immortality, seeking eternal life at any cost. Others had become slaves to their own ambitions, harnessing the supernatural for personal gain. I realized that the line between good and evil was not as clear-cut as I had once believed. In the midst of this tumultuous struggle, I also found unexpected allies. A group of individuals, each with their own unique talents and experiences, joined me in my quest to protect the world from the malevolent forces that threatened it. We formed a bond, united by our shared purpose and a desire to atone for our past mistakes. Together, we faced formidable adversaries and confronted the darkness head-on. In our battles against ancient evils and modern malevolence, we discovered the strength that came from embracing our own humanity. It was not the pursuit of power or immortality that defined us but our capacity for compassion, empathy, and selflessness. As I looked back on my journey, I realized that my encounter with Count Dracula had been a turning point in my life. It had forced me to confront the darkness within myself and in the world around me. I had been both tempted and tested, and in the process, I had gained a deeper understanding of the complexities of human nature. In a climactic confrontation, we faced a manifestation of the darkness that had once ensnared me. It was a battle not just of physical prowess but of willpower and inner strength. With the support of my newfound allies, I resisted the allure of darkness and embraced the light within. In the aftermath of the battle, I stood at a crossroads. The world of the supernatural still held many mysteries and dangers, but I knew that I could not let it consume me. My mission was clear: to use my knowledge and abilities to protect the innocent and preserve the delicate balance between light and shadow. I bid farewell to my allies, knowing that our paths might cross again in the future. They had become a family to me, and I carried their support and camaraderie in my heart as I returned to the world of mortals once more. Life continued to be a balancing act between my mortal existence and my knowledge of the supernatural. I established myself as a scholar and researcher, using my expertise to advise and assist those who encountered the unknown. Yet, I knew that there would always be more to learn, more battles to fight, and more mysteries to unravel. In the end, my encounter with Count Dracula had been a test of character and resilience. It had taught me that the pursuit of knowledge could be a double-edged sword and that true power came not from immortality or darkness but from the choices we made and the connections we formed with others. And so, my story continues. As I pen these final words, I am reminded of the delicate balance that exists in the world. Light and shadow, good and evil, they are intertwined in a dance that defines our existence. It is up to each of us to choose our steps carefully, for it is in those choices that our destiny lies.